Sweets. This is Sid. This is our Friday weekly check-in where we review what we've shipped in the past week and plan out our next week. Kicking it off how we always do. In one word, how you feeling today? And in one sentence, what do you need today?
In one word, I'm feeling excited. I'm going to Disney next week with the fam. So, one, I will be off next week. I mean, I'll be able to check in and stuff. I'm still going to bring my computer and stuff, but during the day, I'll be experiencing the magic of Disneyland or Disney World with my 3-year-old. So that'll be fun. And what do I need? So yeah, need some clarity on what we're going to be doing. What do we need to ship? Where are we at with sandboxes? I'm gonna be out next week. So what do you want to have done by the end of the week that I can test when I get back?
Disney's exciting. Is it going to be, you think it'll be warm in Florida next week?
Yeah, it's supposed to be warm, so that'll be good. And it's like we're going like at like a good time because it's like not spring break. It's in the middle of the week, so hopefully it's like not crazy lines
and
and stuff.
No fast passes needed. Just hopefully nobody's there.
Yeah, it'll be good though to see the Disney.
Don't go to Disney World.
Yeah. Not next week. Maybe the following week. How about you? How are you feeling? What do you need?
Feeling after yesterday, I'm feeling lost, and I need data tracking to have more quantitative clarity on where we are with sandbox adoption and pulse adoption, the things that we've been building, getting actual data around. Are people using it? How are they using it, etc.? Lost because I spent all day yesterday trying to get the first time sandbox working, and I built out an exact same task as what is currently working for the run sandbox tool. And for some reason, the new one that I built is just not, it's hitting errors in OpenClaw, and running it in the task is not telling me good details on what's happening. And I spent all day just working on that one task and not really getting it into I ended up merging it so that I could see how it was in prod. Because at the end of it, Claude was just saying it's exactly the same. The only difference is the environment. So I'm like, okay, I'll merge it. And then I merged it, and then it was still not matching. And so I was like, the code looked exactly the same, but for some reason it's not. For some reason the results are different. So today I put that task off to the side, and now I'm working on our coding agent for Recoup. And I just before this call got it working on coding. So we have a task, I can input a prompt, and then it'll open up a PR at the end of that with whatever the submodule is.
Demo.
Yeah, let's see it.
We're going right into demos, Sweet. But that's cool because you said what you needed and how you're feeling. So I'm cool with that. Let's move.
So we've got this coding. We have 2 new tasks. Well, I split it out into 2 different PRs. So for right now, you can only see coding agent, but there's also a review PR one. One is for starting a PR. The other one is for updating an existing PR. So this one, coding agent, is for writing a new PR. And you just tell it what changes you want to make to the code base. Right now, I'm making it kind of explicit, saying make sure you pushed, because I'm trying to get it to work, but it should not need that. This was me debugging. Don't need that anymore. So this would be an example of what you would send in a Slack prompt or a Telegram prompt, or however we're going to be opening up pull requests moving forward. Sid says something like add music flamingo into our code base. Something. Do you have any prompt you want me to send to see how it does?
Oh, not at the top of my head. Yeah. You come up with one. I'm not.
Something I would like to work on after this. Nena is a Venezuelan who lives in France, an artist and musician that uses all the products that I build. And she has been telling me that whenever she goes over to the schedule actions pages, the page crashes. Scheduled actions have been reported to be crashing the page for some artists. Can you debug why and open a PR fixing any bugs on the /tasks
Question
page?
before you send it.
Go ahead.
Will you saying for some artists confuse it? Because in this case, she's a customer or user.
You mean saying an artist instead of an account?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. And then we run it. You saw that there was a Slack callback thread in there. Right now, this is not being used, but this is the Slack thread that will get updated when the agent finishes. So we send in the prompt and we send the Slack thread that it should update when it finishes. And then it does this pretty much the same setup that we do for our customer prompt. Create a sandbox, install OpenClaw, onboard OpenClaw. These are things I should set up with a snapshot later. One thing I'm thinking would be good and might reduce some of the noise across all the things that we're doing and reduce the runtime is having just a base snapshot that already has OpenClaw installed and OpenClaw onboarded. That seems to be something that takes, as you can see, like close to a minute just in setup. And it potentially is causing some errors for me always having to do it. And so it might be worth having a snapshot that is always restored if we don't pass anything in. And that snapshot would just be OpenClaw is already installed and onboarded. That way we're starting off.
Why would you use OpenClaw? Why would you use OpenClaw instead of OpenCode or Claude Code specifically for like a coding agent?
So far our mental model is OpenClaw is the best coding agent in the world, and so just using that for everything.
I would challenge that, but I know I realize you're just shipping this as is. But yeah, and I agree with the installing the stuff beforehand will probably help a lot.
Injects all the environment variables that's needed, configures a GitHub token. That way it can push an open pull request, clones the entire mono repo. And then once it clones the mono repo and then initializes all the submodules. So it clones the overall repo and then it goes into each of those directories and installs the submodule. And then it triggers the coding agent, which runs the prompt that I just said, scheduled actions has been reported to crash. Can you debug, open up a PR, and then make sure to push your changes and open a PR. I think we automatically inject this last part. Make sure you push your changes and open a PR just to make sure. And even after this, this step should just be the coding step. It shouldn't need to open the PR because then after this finishes, I have another explicit step for it to push the changes and open the PR. So there's how many agent calls are in here? There's an agent call to clone the repo right here where we tell it to clone the repo because our mono repo is public and then install the submodules. Second AI call is for the coding agent doing the actual task that we are prompting it to do. And then the final coding agent prompt is for pushing the changes and opening up a pull request.
What model is it using when it installs OpenClaw?
All of our sandboxes right now are using Opus 4.6 across all accounts.
Cool.
So the most expensive that we possibly could be. Over time, I think we would likely want to differentiate the model based off of if they're pro or not. Up to you if we want to keep pro on Claude 4.6 Opus. But then the free maybe put on the new Google model, 3.1 Premium Lite or whatever. It seems like people are saying good things about that. And it's really inexpensive. It's in the free tier.
Yeah, I agree. I also was thinking, for OpenClaw specifically, non-coding things, I've been getting great results with Sonnet 4.6 instead of Opus 4.6.
Mm.
For non-coding things. And then ChatGPT or OpenAI just launched 5.4 thinking.
Yep.
So that I haven't tested that yet, but that's probably also like a Sonnet 4.6 competitor. So like those
Is it a
two
lower
seem
price
like,
point?
yeah, those seem like a lower price point, but also like the new like flagship models of for consumer uh, for consumer stuff. And then the coding stuff, like for our stuff like this, I would probably leave it at 4.6 or even go to like Codex 5.3 because I've been hearing things like Codex. It seems like Codex 5.3 will run longer uh, without asking questions or like steering off. Uh, at least this is what I've been experiencing. So like when I'm when I'm pair programming and it's more experimental or exploratory and I'm like back and forth with the agent, then I use 4.6. If it's something where I just like want it to run a task and do it and I'll like come back in 30 minutes later and not think about it, then I've been using Codex 5.3.
So when the run finishes, we get a pull request. The agent has opened up a pull request in the chat repo. We have it here. And then it tried to send the callback to update the thread and say that the PR was created, but we don't have the endpoint published yet. So that's what I need to do now. This test works. I think I've already reviewed all this code. So now I just need to merge it. And I will merge it. And then once I merge this, I'll do the update PR one.
When you say, what do you mean this test works? Oh, merge it, not merge like the thing that you just sent, right? Like
No, not this. This PR that was open needs to be tested, and I want to look into it deeper. But it did open up a PR, but I'm not going to merge this PR. No, I'm talking about me adding this task right now is just running locally. We just ran this, and it's running on my local machine, and so we'll merge this so that this task actually exists in the production code base for the tasks repo, and then I can keep moving down the line for getting this coding agent closer and closer to our Slack environment, so that way we can start talking to it from Slack. While Sid's at Disney World waiting in the FastPass line, he can be having ideas and sending little Slack prompts and not need his local machine access.
Cool. I like it. Some quick thoughts about this agent has specific access to our code base. Well, I guess all of them do if we asked for it, but this one would be specific for code base. So I'm just thinking about like when we're starting to add Slack integrations, like should we make this a different app than the actual like recoupable Slack app for to put into the thread with our customers? So like one that says like recoup code that we call, that is this one that is just like recoup Slack agent or recoupable agent or whatever. Just call it just recoupable in general or whatever. But separating those two from like internal agent from external agent.
That probably
But
makes
I like
sense.
it. So you said you got lost yesterday because like you just were trying to figure out what was going on with the installation.
The setup sandbox. Yeah, we have a task called setup sandbox, and it looks identical to the run sandbox command, except it doesn't run a command at the end. Well, the two differences are run sandbox command, you have to pass it a sandbox that it manipulates. Setup sandbox creates its own sandbox. And then the other difference is after the sandbox provisioning happens, run sandbox command runs the command that was provided, and that step does not exist inside of setup sandbox. And for some reason, every time I'm running the setup sandbox, it gets stuck on like cloning orgs or on running the setup sandbox skill. And I haven't been able to figure out why. I'm leaning towards right now the next step for that is following the exact same lead as run sandbox command and have setup sandbox take this, have the API spin up the sandbox and then pass that sandbox into the task. I don't know why that would be different, but I'm thinking just reduce all the differences until it works. But the overall goal being with that task of setup sandbox, we've had this on the list for 2 weeks now. How can we auto set up sandboxes for new customers and existing customers? Just want to make it so that when someone does hit a prompt where it's spinning up a sandbox, that sandbox is ready. And
Yeah, it's
they don't have
ready
to
as
wait live.
Yeah, I agree. There was a there were yeah, I agree with you. I believe I sent an article on sandboxes and auto spin them up. But I agree, getting it to a place where, like, what's the lowest or what's the fastest way to get user prompt and then result, even if there's a sandbox in the middle of that required. That speeding up that process is a good focus of time. All right, cool. Is there anything else you want to go over?
Now we can jump over to you if you have stuff you want to talk about that you've shipped this week.
Yeah. The first thing before I forget is yesterday I uploaded songs to my sandbox, and then a couple hours later they were gone. Was that in relation to what you were working on? I could not
I was
figure out.
wondering. I had noticed that your songs in Gatsby Grace were gone too. I didn't know why. I thought you had done that intentionally.
I did not yesterday. Is there a way that we can trace what happened? I tried asking it, and it could not find the git trace.
No, you're going to go into the org repo for Rostrum and look at the git history. Sid, it looks like Sid still has 2 different repos, so depending on which one you're signing in with is going to give you different results. Just making sure you're aware of that. It looks like 1 hour ago you signed into both. Or
Yeah, but
these were for Pulse likely. These were likely pulses that spun up your sandboxes.
oh.
Okay. So it looks like February 26th was when we added ADHD, P, all tracks written and produced, update release notes, Glico, Spotify tracker on the 28th. Thought we were doing that just a couple days ago. I thought we added the songs in from Gatsby Grace.
Yeah, it was 2 days ago.
2 days ago. When did you this is different?
Yeah. That was like to delete the file. Like, but is there two orgs that or something that, like, we're not, like, accidentally, or this is where I'm getting a little confused.
I don't think so. What might be happening, we might not be updating the snapshot depending on how you're running the sandbox. The snapshot might not be getting updated because when you call a snapshot, it closes the sandbox. And so in the streaming tool, it does not close the sandbox, which means it does not take a snapshot in the tool that you like. This is coming back to a divergence that you and I have. I am still leaning towards all sandboxes should be run as background tasks, and you want stuff to be streamed.
But we added the songs through email.
If we added the songs through email, then
And
that
I saw them there.
that goes against my hypothesis.
And yesterday, when I was like working on the content creation pipeline, I was using them. Like,
No, actually, that's still going to use the same tool, even in it's still using the same chat endpoint, and so in that chat endpoint, it is using the one that streams it. No matter where you're talking to it, it's still using the streaming endpoint if you've already created a sandbox. And in all those cases, it's not going to be updating the snapshot. So it will have pushed the changes to the Git repo, but the sandbox itself will be on an older snapshot. So what I'm thinking happened is you did those in the same snapshot, you added the files, that sandbox closed, the snapshot was never updated. The GitHub was updated, but the snapshot wasn't. You or someone else or a Pulse then opens up the sandbox later with the last snapshot, which does not have your changes in it. It never pulled the latest changes from GitHub, and so it's manipulating an older version of the org, and then it pushed a change, tried to push a change, saw that it was conflicting with what was actually in main, and then just said, I'm just going to force. I think we are actually telling it to just use force, and so then it forced its change, and then which would totally get rid of your commits from the history. That's my hypothesis. What other data do you have that would contradict that hypothesis?
Nothing that makes sense.
Okay. It says 4 days ago were the last updates to the Gatsby Grace folder. We know for a fact we've done it in 2 days ago, which to me says somebody has pushed commits, which is changing our timestamps.
So the force push is getting rid of like being able to go backwards and finding where those are.
Yep.
So maybe that's what we should get rid of so that we can at least not lose like in the event that this happens. I don't know. There's two bugs going on, right? One is we should be able to back up thing, or we should be able to go back in time. So whatever's preventing us from being able to like find the Git that the songs are on and like restore is one thing. And then the other thing is just fixing like the whole like how did it happen in the first place of not saving. And you're saying that it's choosing background agents versus chat.
It is not using background agent. It is using the streaming one that you preferred.
What's the easiest fix? Is just going to the non-streaming one?
Easiest fix is remove the force push note from. Does that even use force push? This is the downside of supporting so many different paths is every single one needs maintained, and we have to keep in our minds what's the difference between each one. This is the same slowdown that I'm talking to you about for your content generation. You want to support a slug and an artist ID. Each additional thing requires maintenance, which not only is maintaining the code, but also in your brain. What are the differences in those paths? What are the trade-offs in each of those paths? And so each additional path that we build needs maintained in code as well as in our own mental models of how our architecture is built, which is a benefit of having less paths. That way there's less to maintain code-wise and less to maintain in our heads because everything is simpler code, right? We still haven't figured out a good sandbox stack. And as a result, we're supporting multiple different endpoints and multiple different flows. And those flows have if statements, and we don't know which one got triggered. And each of those does a different thing. I am currently leaning towards running it in a background task is the best way to be doing agents, not trying to do it directly in an API endpoint. Sid has so far been saying he prefers them to be handled right inside of the API endpoint. So until we align on that or get more clear into how those get handled, right now it is unclear, and there are multiple different things we need to fix in order to figure out a root cause of things that are showing up as a result of multiple paths being possible and multiple triggers manipulating the same code base.
If you're leaning towards background, then let's try to perfect background and think about what that means for the customer experience. If their expectation is streaming and the product that they've been using for the last 6 months is streaming in chat, how can we, if we're moving towards backgrounds, how can we, as we're implementing it, also transfer those new expectations to the customer so that it's not misunderstood of what's going on? That's my biggest concern, is that people are used to the chat, getting instant results, talking with it, seeing what's going on. And if that just stops, especially inline chat, if that just stops being the main way of interacting, it's going to be a clunky experience. But I agree with, like, we still haven't figured out the kinks of the background agent and sandboxing. And what's more important is that customer files don't get removed if they've added them. So I think that's probably the thing to focus on. Do you agree?
I'll pose the same question to you. You sent an article from the guy that made AI agent SDK, or that Pontus guy, saying your SaaS isn't dead, your UI is. You continue to say our customers are using our UI, and we don't want to deprecate that experience. I continue to say we should be leveraging other clients where our customers are actually spending their time. Why do you continue? Well, what is blocking you from moving more of your attention into the email client and clients where our customers actually spend their time? Why do you continue to want to believe and lean towards getting our customers inside of a web app?
It's less about want and believe. It's more about what the customers are doing. And it's like a trade-off between, like, meeting the customer where they're at and their expectations versus
Where's the customer at?
the customers in the web app. Like, that's what they've been experiencing. That's what they're used to. They're not used to communicating on email. They're not used to tagging an agent in email. They're not used to a Slack client.
Are you saying our customers spend 90% of their day at chat.recoupable.com and not in Gmail?
No. What I'm saying is their expectation of the current product that they've been using at Recoupable, and what, upon onboarding and upon learning how it works and what artists are and how to add context and all of that stuff, like, is in web app. And so, like, that's the general mental model that they are used to. Now, I'm not saying we can't move them, but I'm saying if we are going to move them, we don't want to break the other thing before we move them. You know, we don't want them. We don't want to depreciate performance of the thing that they've already gotten used to, and lose their trust in the process. So I agree that we need to move towards CLI. We need to move towards building for agents, but at the same time, like, we need to retain our customer and making sure that they are along for that journey. I think half of it is talking to customers, that the other half is getting it working for them and reliable for them outside of the chat. I also will say this too. Actually, let me also bring this up. There is a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? There is a bit of a annoyance of always having to do things through, and maybe it's just me not being used to it either, but doing it through email and chat. I'm sorry, doing it through email versus just dragging and dropping something and it working. Like, for example, I have a bunch of folders with a bunch of Gatsby Grace pictures and images. And for me to upload them or add them to an email in batches of emails, because they're all not going to fit in one email, and then also tell the agent, like, please organize these files and folders in these specific ways, and then have to like mentally think, like, put these mood board ones in the mood board folder, create a mood board folder. This, like, and that act is a longer process and more annoying than me being able to just like drag and drop into a UI interface like I would locally or like on a web app. So like there is that trade-off of unless like they're making it some kind of way to make it easy to want to interact with the agents, or like identify when an agent, when a UI is valuable. I guess is my thought. Do you understand where I'm coming from with that?
I understand. When you got on customer calls this week, how many of them did you tell to send an email to Recoup versus open up the web app? How many customer calls did you have this week?
Like 3 or 3.5. One got cut in half, but I usually am in web app, but bring up email at the end. And again, yes, that is what I usually do. Is I'm in the web app and then move to email. The reason why is because web app is faster. It's easier, like back and forth. People can see things happening. Like if I send an email and then the call's like, all right, cool, now we're going to wait for 2 minutes until we get something. And then, oh, we got it. Let's read and see what it did. And like, oh, okay, we'll like, so it's like, I guess the experience of the web, of the email can be improved. And that is why I'm leaning more on the web app. But in that case, the question is, how do we improve the email and other clients? I don't know the answer, but I do know we need to figure out I agree with you with background agents if we want to, like, in splitting up the mental model of the streaming versus background agents. And I agree we should focus on the background. and I guess just like it's more just then thinking about the UI and how do we get, if we're going to be using background agents, how do we give the customer the best experience possible during that, like for that process, so they're not confused, so it's exciting, so it's easy to understand and easy to use.
So far for next week, I've written down remove force push and remove stream only background. Still feeling like the main goal is how do we auto set up sandboxes for all customers. So that's also going to include I need a tracking page. I'm leaning towards /admin on the chat website, mostly because it has all of our authentication, and I thought about putting it in the founder's dashboard, but I don't think that's using Privy, and I don't think it's using authentication for our endpoints, and I don't want to build it in there.
I think it is. No.
I remember you added a new auth of email and password sign in for your founder's dashboard, right?
Yeah.
This is, again, building a new thing requires it to be maintained. Choosing to build another thing instead of building off of our existing thing means if we're not continuing to update it, it makes devs like me hesitate to continue to build on the founder's dashboard because it's a whole different auth system that doesn't follow our backend API nor our chat. And so I then say, okay, I don't want to build on that thing. I would rather build on the thing that the fewer divergences we make, the fewer we could ship a whole bunch of different divergences, but each of those is going to slow us down in the long run because we have to keep all that in our head of why did we make those trade-offs? Why is it different? Why didn't it follow the same simple mental model? One of the things I'm reading skin in the game, evolution is reductive. There was this big crypto bubble in 2022, and everybody knew that on-chain was going to be the thing. And then the hype died. And then everybody who had mental models and hypotheses which were not correct for reality died. The world killed all the people that had mental models they thought were right, but actually were not right. And so we evolved. On-chain still exists. Ethereum still exists. Bitcoin still exists. But everybody with those bad mental models that don't actually match reality, evolution killed them. The people that are still around are the ones that are left after all the reduction. The same thing exists with Recoup. We expand new features, we try things out, and then as we learn and as we evolve, evolution becomes reduction. And what is true is what remains after we get rid of all the things. Reduction is not continuing to add more and more and more. It's actually chopping off things and making it simpler to a more core fundamental truth about the product.
I can agree with that. I like that. I like the mental model.
So I'll build out a tracking page. The thing I want to track is going to be who has GitHub repos and snapshots.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a quick challenge to what you're about to say. Building a tracking page versus should we then build a start building a new admin dashboard repo in our, put it in our mono repo and base it off of everything that we have our thing. Like if you're gonna go and build a tracker, shouldn't we, like, we're going to need something that does this effectively for every feature, for every tool? Like, should this become its own repo and not use the founder dashboard, but like build it correctly and not vibe coded?
Sounds like the question you're asking is, does this deserve being built inside of the chat repo as a /admin page, or Build it as a
It's-
standalone app. That's the
Correct.
question. Probably makes sense to build it separately because building it inside of chat is two different concerns being held together of some pages are only accessible by admins and others by everybody. The chat app probably makes most sense. Every page should be accessible by everybody, and that follows the single responsibility principle more. In that case, my first thought is, well, we already have an admin app. It's your founder's dashboard app. Should I just update that?
No,
It's going to be
I would say no, because I vibe coded it and it was me vibe coding before I even knew about single responsibility principle. I would rather you build the admin repo
Mhm.
and lay the foundation for how you want it and how you're envisioning it. And then I can always go into the founders thing and be like, hey, we had this feature over here, but like do it in this new way with simpler
Mhm.
code. And like, because it's not like the founder admin dashboard still exists, and like I'm not maintaining it as much as I should be. So it's not like I think that you should build if we're going to do it and it's something that is foundational, we should probably build it right from the ground up.
I do like that you have it set up to a domain. You mentioned that you might want to port some stuff over, which might not be conducive to me resetting the current repo. The question in my head right now is, do I spin up a new repo from scratch and just keep it on a Vercel domain, or set up a new domain called admin.recoupable.com? Or do I go into your existing founder dashboard, purge everything, start it from scratch, but keep the
I'm leaning towards just you admin.recoupable.com.
new repo, new domain.
Yeah, dude. And we build out our admin with the fundamentals that you're saying, because I agree with you. The simpler we make this, also like there's something that like in my current mono repo, I have a .local folder, something that I don't push, but in there is like an email app where I can like pull all emails that we've ever had and all users. So like I'm using this functionality like internally on my own computer just to see who's active this week, like, and stuff. So, but you don't get to see into that. So like, I think this is something that, yeah, we should probably build it out in a way that we both can access it. Obviously it needs to be private though, and not a public one.
Why?
Because you can pull customer.
Are you saying the code base is private, or access to the deployed version of the code base and the data behind it is restricted authentication?
Restricted authentication.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, the code base can still be public, but you can see the calls that it makes, but actually being able to get the results of those calls should be restricted to Sid signing in via email, that account, an API key and access token from Privy, and my access token from Privy should be the only ones that can make a request to those API endpoints and get back data. But the code base could still be public. Just the more we make public, the more our agents can act on, and any LLM can act on, without us needing to give it special privileges, which is great for vibe coders building on top. You could continue to make an argument that the code base could be private. It would be the only private code base inside of our mono repo. Speaking of, this is a little tangential. You talking about the skills architecture. I had mentioned putting everything inside of one skills repo, following OpenAI, and I also saw Trigger.dev did the same thing with their skills. And then you'd mentioned we couldn't make it private, right?
Correct.
I agree. And in that case, we could put all of our public skills in a skills repo with this _ skill flag. Anything you want private, keep that in a separate private repo. And then the only difference is all of our public ones go into one shared skills repo. That makes it easy discoverability for any agent, not to just find a single skill, but to find all of our public skills. And then our
So-
private skills stay in separate skill packages.
So I agree with you. The way that the current skills folder is set up is that it is a public repo, and the mono repos in it that are not public do not get installed unless you flag them and you have a recoupable email address. So for example, brand guidelines of recoupable is a skill, but we don't want to install, if somebody installs recoupable /skills, they don't need recoupable's brand guidelines as a skill, right? Like they're going to want their own brand guidelines. Or if there's any other skills that we want to keep private because it's like our recoupable's email blast skill or whatever. So I was thinking of a more like internal skills versus external skills. And the way it currently does it is you can still go to, npx add skills, add recoupable /skills. It will download the full repo and all of the skills, but it won't download the private skills that are in the sub repo or in the sub repos, unless you ask for it and you're authenticated, your email's authenticated. If that makes sense. I believe that's how it's set up now. We can like test deeper, but that's how I initially had thought through it, was like, how do I make something that, like, if I want to promote it as recoupable /skills, everybody go use our music industry skills. Like they can, but they also don't get a bunch of like unnecessary private skills.
Okay.
But it makes it like, so we don't have to maintain two skills repos. But at the same time, now we have to maintain multiple skills repos per skill. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't know what's better in the long run.
Yeah, it was a little tangent, not something we gotta go down too deep. On the admin page, what do we want to see to be able to express the adoption of sandboxes? Well, I guess step back. At the end of next week, is there a different feature you want developed more than sandboxes, or is sandboxes still number one feature we want to be developing right now?
Getting sandboxes to work and not delete things and install correctly, I think, is number one.
Okay, so what do we want to see on when we go to the admin for sandboxes? I would like to see a table showing sandboxes being created in the customer that I can filter on past 12 hours, past 24 hours, so that I can answer the question, what customers have created sandboxes in X period of time? What is something that you would like to see to be able to know how effective sandboxes are? You talking about commits makes me think you want to see list of all the org repos along with the number of commits beside them and maybe when the last commit was. What do we want to be tracking on our sandbox dashboard so that we can better answer the question that you keep coming to these Friday calls with, of what's the deadline, what's the progress, what's the status of sandboxes?
Yes. My initial thought of what you just said of all orgs is that I don't want to add a bunch of noise to the data because I have 20 orgs and you have 20 orgs and we're not using all of them, and all of a sudden it says we have 40 orgs, and really it's so like maybe just some kind of filtering against like what is test things or things like that we're doing versus like the reality of the situation, which is, okay, gas speed grace is an like what defines an active org versus a non-active org. that we should be tracking. Active customer versus non-active customer. If we install orgs as a pulse across every customer, is that really signal? Like, or is it really like active customers who have, have done something in the past month, So I guess that's what I think. Is how do we, when we build it, just think through signal versus noise, like, so we don't get caught up in bullshit.
Do we only want to highlight the rostrum org for now, or do you want to be able to see other orgs to see if what organizations other customers have?
We should probably, well, it's like other organizations, but also some customers might not have orgs, but they're still spinning up sandboxes, right?
That's correct. And that is an interesting case. In all the testing we've done, we have always had orgs. I don't know if we've done any tests of customers who don't have any orgs created.
Correct.
So two different tables right now being displayed, one for the sandboxes being created by customers and another showing the commits that are going into org subrepos. Both of those I'll show on the sandbox admin page. What else do we want? What other questions do we want answered, or what other data do we want displayed, so that the sandbox admin page can help Sid answer the question of what's the status of sandboxes, how's our adoption going of sandboxes, how are our retention going of sandboxes, what's the signal versus noise in sandboxes.
I think I guess sandboxes created versus last used. Last use is hard, especially if it's on a pulse. I don't know the answer off like the first top of my head.
Do you want to be able to see a breakdown, a table showing sandboxes created in Pulse versus sandboxes created in Task, or what triggered the sandbox, Pulse, scheduled action, or chat?
Yeah. I guess what triggered it is a good one.
Sandbox triggers.
And being able to filter it so we can see, right? Because if it's a pulse, it's a little less signal when it comes to usage than a chat or a task.
What do you see as the potential triggers that you would love to be able to break it down on Pulse, task, and chat?
Yeah, those are the three. I mean, if we want to also say email versus web app.
Versus web for the chat. Copy.
Email, and I think, like, I mean, if we're building this out, like, foundationally, like, those are things that we're going to want to track across every feature, not just sandbox. So cool.
So far my weekly goals at the end, when you come back from Disney World, we should have sandboxes getting automatically created for every customer, new and existing. And we should have a page to be able to track what customers are creating sandboxes created versus last used, what commits are going into this org, what is triggering the sandbox versus Pulse, task, and chat, removing the force push so that way we're not overwriting commits, and remove the stream, reducing how we can spin up a sandbox from chat to only be background tasks. What am I missing that you would like to see when you come back from Disney World?
I think that's good, unless you want unless you're asking me to add more because you don't think that's enough. enough. Do you want me to give you lob a couple more things or no?
Give me them, and so that way I can write them down and have visibility.
All right, cool. There's two. No, there's three. There's three. It's just really like there's three, but there's just expansions on what you have on your list. The first one is if you're going to be building an admin dashboard or admin tracking thing, just like expanding around that infrastructure and in general. Like, should we also just start moving tracking like active users per week? Should we also be tracking like what are the other metrics? What are the other features that we have that we want to be tracking? What are the other, like, how do we expand that to a place where it's easy when you build Slack to like be like, okay, cool. We're also going to, when we do Slack, we can easily add it to the admin dashboard and track that as well. So like the mental model around how do we want to make it easy to build that is that's one side of it. The other thing was Slack, and starting to that client for customers. I would love to be able to jump into the Rostrum Recoupable chat when somebody says, "Hey, can you make a piece of content for this?" And I like just tag Recoupable and say, "Hey, can you make a piece of content for this?" And then start playing around with like, where does it fail versus how I would do it manually versus how I do it with the content pipeline, but like starting to merge those worlds of like manual requests from customers versus like showing them, hey, look, you guys can do this too. As I think Slack is a great middle ground between email and the web app. Because you're not expecting streaming and you're not expecting back and forth, but you can like talk more async.
So far, you've asked on the tracking page, you want to be able to see active accounts per week, and you want a Slack client that we can add into the Rostrum Recoup chat so that you can tag it and say, at Recoup, can you, for example, create this content? Am I properly what am I missing from what I just said to properly understand the requirements you just gave?
No, that's the two.
You said there was more?
No, the other one, it has to do with the content pipeline. Because in order to say, hey, go do this, go create this asset, the content pipeline needs to be live. And so I need to like ship the content pipeline, but I'm going to be out. So like I'm going to be trying to ship it next week.
So you want me to try to progress the content pipeline?
If you can. It would also like just to have your eyes on it of like, this is the state it's currently in to work, but like what would make this better? I know there's like lots of ways to build it better. I tried to make it a skill, but then it just was too long of a process. Like, you know, especially like if you are like, make me 30 pieces of content, like it's a all night thing of let it run all night to do those. Right. And so like, it needs to kind of be a pipeline and some, but there's also like a lot of points in it where I'm like, human in the loop needs to validate what the content looks like before they kick off like a batch run. is what I'm realizing. Like somebody will be like, oh, can you make this piece of content? And then I make it, and then they're like, oh, it looks great. Can you just turn that sticker black? And I'm like, oh, that's like the human part of me that's like, God, like we could have ran it for 30, but like they have this one request, and if we would have ran it all night and then they came back, we just blew through all of the tokens. So that's another part of it. It's like validation of the first initial image, video. It works. Do you approve? Now I'm going to batch run this for 30 days. So that kind of thing. And then the final part of the content creation pipeline, which I haven't even thought about yet, in depthly, is like also attaching it to credits, because right now it's an expensive process.
Right.
It's about $50 if you want to do a 30-month.
You said $50.
It's about $50 to make 30 days worth of content, like 90 pieces of content at like VO 3.1, and like the top models with upscaling is between $50 and $60 for a month of short form content 3 times a day. And you can backtrack, but I have the cost estimate thing, like where you can like swap models and do this. So like in my perfect world, it's like this before running it, or at least being like knowing like, hey, this is going to cost X amount of credits, and connecting credits to the pipeline, or else people are going to be running fucking a year of content and we're going to go out of business. But yeah, I guess but that's like a big one. So I guess diving into that whenever you can, if you have the time.
Yeah, all this has been written down so that as I go through things, if I get stuck on one, I can progress on something else and not have it be random. On my side, this has given me direction so that I feel less lost and I know what needs to be prioritized. You started this call saying you want clarity on what needs shipped for while you're in Disney World. Do you feel like you have that clarity, or better asked, what is missing for you to have clarity before you unplug and enjoy the time with your family?
I have clarity. Yeah. I have clarity, and I can still test things. And like I said, like at night, I have my computer, so I'm not going to be completely offline. I'm going to be trying to do stuff. I'm really excited about this content pipeline because it seems like the most very specific problem that we can solve for customers. I'm just really excited about the content pipeline, and like it goes hand in hand with the sandbox, because it needs to use the sandbox to pull and storing MP3s and all of that stuff is. But I feel like if we nail this fucking content pipeline, there's going to be an aha moment for people of like, oh, I know what to use Recoupable for this specific problem in my workflow every day, And so I'm excited about that. I've posted a bunch of LinkedIn stuff over the last month, and I've gotten the most DMs from people being like, when I talked about like the automation of the social media. Yeah. So I think people want that. All right.
You all are going to get 1 week without us. Don't miss us too much. We will be back in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, I'll probably be going live a couple times next week on my own as Dev at work. But you won't get to see Sid's beautiful face. He's going to be enjoying the magic of Disney. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.